Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Hey, where you been? Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan, Krajisnik, and that's Andrew Gillis. We continue to work through our greatest Buckeye bracket. We've made it to the Elite Eight, and we've made it to the final matchup of the Elite Eight. It's the 4-5 game. It's a game that's always supposed to be competitive, always supposed to go wire to wire, maybe even in overtime. We'll see what happens. It's the Urban Meyer Regional Championship game. The number 4 seed Chris Spielman, linebacker from 1984 to 1987, and quarterback J.T. Barrett, a quarterback from 2013 through 2017. Okay, so Stefan, there's always, it feels like with all these conversations so far, when we're talking about the accolades and stats, it's a lot of, hey, would you rather want your stats to look like this, or would you rather have your accolades and stats look like that? It's like both of these meals are good, but are you in the mood for Mexican food or Mediterranean food? Do you want McDonald's or do you want Wendy's? Do you want Arby's or do you want Taco Bell? If we're at Penn State and they're right next to each other at a hotel we're all staying at, you two want Taco Bell and I want Arby's. I wonder which one we're going to pick today. With Chris Spielman, I feel like it's more about dominance, while with JT Barrett, it's maybe more about longevity.
Yeah, no doubt, because you go up and down the board here of their accolades, they're a ton, right? There's a lot to unpack. I mean, with JT, you're talking 3-time All Big Ten, Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2014, 3-time Big Ten Quarterback of the Year, 2016 Big Ten Most Valuable Player, and he was only an All-American once, if I'm reading this correctly. Yeah, 2014 he was a third-team All-American. That was the only time he was an All-American. And then when you look at Chris Spielman, again, 3-time first-team All-Big Ten, Chick Harley Award, Lombardi Award. He was a 3-time All-American. So yeah, both were obviously very good. Spielman probably kind of over the scope of national success, won some more with the All-American accolades, but there's no denying that both these guys are extremely decorated players. JT did it for, a long time. It seemed like he was at Ohio State for forever, which now looks like nothing. Now it's like, if you haven't played 9 years of college football, what are you doing? Which would have been hilarious, because if JT Barrett played, maybe he would have found a way to get a few more years of eligibility under his belt. But yeah, JT, from the time he arrived as a freshman, was obviously uber talented and uber successful throughout his career. But Spielman, when he played, he was, among the most dominant linebackers in the country year after year. So it's pretty impressive what both these guys were able to do kind of over the scope of their entire careers.
Andrew, is it fair to call Chris Spielman James Laurinaitis before James Laurinaitis?
Ooh, that's a good question. Maybe. The more that I think about it, maybe. I don't hate that. I don't hate that. That's not a bad comp.
Sam.
It was him, then Katzenmoyer, then Laurinaitis and AJ Hawk.
And now you have Arvell Reese.
All roads lead to Glen.
All roads.
You should do one of those things that like if you cover a professional team or whatever, you see those things like trade trees. You should just do that. Say, here's how Chris Spielman led to Ohio State getting Arvell Reese and go, Chris Spielman was here, which made AJ Hawk come here, which made James Laurinaitis come here, which made James Laurinaitis be the linebackers coach, and he's going to turn Arvell Reese and got Arvell Reese, and he's going to be the greatest linebacker in the history of football. So you should do that. That should be your off-season project.
I meson have a lot of off-season projects already going on right now. I don't know if I can add any more.
I was telling Stefan that.
Well, I'm just saying.
We actually just had a reader email me another fun off-season project that would take so much time to do this. Great idea. A Buckeye Mount Rushmore, but of all sports. We'd be here forever.
Yeah.
Because like you got like this, like now we're talking Jack Nicklaus. Like this is a whole nother realm.
Ohio State's actually really good at sports.
Its Olympic sports are like arguably the best in the country. You know, like the SEC has a ton of great track and field programs and gold medalists and things like that. But like, I mean, Ohio State's pretty stacked too.
Sure.
Archie Griffin, Jesse Owens, Jack Nicklaus. And
the SEC does have a lot of great Olympians, and Ohio State has Jesse Owens.
Yeah. Yep. One of the most consequential athletes in the history of the country.
He told Hitler, you know what?
Yeah. The first person to win four gold medals in a single Olympics. I mean, like, all due respect to Troy Smith and Chris Spielman and like J.T. Barrett. Like, my bad, but like Jesse Owens, he's just different. It's a different conversation.
Ohio State, obviously, football is king, and they get a lot of the viewership and conversation in the media. Ohio State University's athletic department is very, very good at a lot. Like the standard of beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win national championships isn't just for football. It's most of the 30+ varsity sports on the campus.
What's funny is now that we talk about it, I actually think the real debate would just be the fourth, because I think between Owens, Nicklaus, and Archie Griffin, 3 of the 4 Mount Rushmores might just be solidified.
Exactly.
Correct.
So maybe it's not as tough of a project as I would have thought.
No, it's not. And then the fourth guy, you know the picture of like the 3-headed dragon they always put up, and it's like 2 serious ones and then one who looks kind of goofy. That would be the challenge, is making sure that the fourth person doesn't look like the goofy head. Because the other 3, one might be the greatest golfer. Well, I mean, Tiger Woods has something to say about that, but you know,
but he's got the most titles, most majors. So
you know, listen, he's in there's Jack Nicholson, Jack Nicklaus, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady on one side of the table, LeBron James, Tiger Woods, Patrick Mahomes. It's the other side of the table, and one side of the table is like, this is what I did. Good luck, and the other side's like, don't get too comfortable.
It's really funny because it's like, I was thinking about it and I was like, all right, so we got Owens and we got Nicklaus and we got Archie. And it's like, all right, if LeBron had to go to college, that would have been a really easy Mount Rushmore to figure out, because then we would have just thrown him on there and it would have been fine.
That conversation, because listen, he didn't send either one of his kids to Ohio State.
Nobody has a degree from here.
That is true. Fact or fiction. LeBron is a doctor of public service, according to Ohio State.
So anyway, back to the linebacker. I think the cool thing about that lineage, though, that we just jokingly talked about, James Laurinaitis is the only one who's not from Ohio. All the other ones are Ohio born and bred. And so Chris Spielman, in a lot of ways, is the originator of that, which is why I say he was James Laurinaitis before James Laurinaitis. He was a 3-time All-American. And listen, we're going to spend a lot of time praising Chris Spielman on this podcast. I just want you two to be prepared for that, because we did not do him justice in the first couple of rounds here. And we were showing our age, and we have to be better at that. I said it yesterday. Our jobs are to hold other people accountable. We also means ourselves. And we didn't do a good job of celebrating Chris Spielman. So I'm just going to be popping in every so often and making sure that regardless of how we feel who should win this matchup, Chris Spielman is going to get celebrated on this pod, not just as a football player, not just as an Ohio State ambassador, but as a human being for a decision he made to essentially end his career later on in his career. And that was during the NFL, but that deserves to be mentioned here as well. But from an accolade standpoint, that's Spielman. Take a quick break there. What do we think of the J.T. Barrett era from just the talent standpoint, just as a football player, not the bigger picture or conversation, just from a simple fact of this guy was here for 5 years. He got an opportunity a year earlier than maybe people were expecting because of what happened to Braxton Miller, to the saga of the 2015 season where they were going back and forth between him and Cardale Jones, to 2016, where the quarterback play was okay at best, to ending his career with a Big Ten championship in 2017. I brought up the word longevity, and I do think that's a nice way to put it, but it's also an honest way to put it. He's Ohio State's all-time leader in passing yards and passing touchdowns, which means he threw a lot of yards and threw for a lot of touchdowns, but it also can mean that he was here forever and a day, when a lot of the other guys who were up high on that list weren't necessarily here forever and a day.
Yeah, it's tough to kind of decipher it all because it is a lot of up and down, but the highs were so memorable. And I think it's just one of those things where at that position, a lot of what you do is determined by your success. You talk about, guys like Tom Brady, like Patrick Mahomes. We don't talk about them because of passing yards and passing touchdowns. We talk about them because of the games they won and the clutch moments that they've had and the postseason success that they've had. And as much as the JT era, as impressive as some of the numbers are, he threw for more than 3,000 yards in 2017, 2,800 yards in 2014, 2,500 yards in 2016. 2015 when there was the whole saga going on, he still threw for 992 yards. The numbers are one thing, but it kind of goes into team success too. I think that's kind of what he's remembered for more than anything. It is maybe the team success and how good Ohio State was, particularly in that stretch of his time at Ohio State. Like, I almost want to lump team success with accolades and stats as it pertains to JT because that's so much of how he's defined. It is the wins. The 4 year. I mean, he was there obviously 5 years. Like, I kind of look more like a 4-year stretch for.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, it's one of the best stretches in college football history for a team that didn't go back to back or things like that. You're looking at 12-2, 14-1, 12-1. Like, they're consistently in the national title conversation. It's a pretty impressive run with him at the helm for most of it.
Andrew, I'm going to hate.
I think this is like the third time we've done one of these things where you go, Stefan, I'm going to hate now. Or guys, I'm going to hate. So go ahead, Steven. Hate.
They're good. They're good people.
I know, of course.
At this point,
these are some of the best Ohio State players in history.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point in the quarterfinals / Elite Eight, nitpicking is literally hating because we're talking about a guy that would arguably be the best player at a lot of other programs.
Before I get into my hate, one word answer. Who is more synonymous with Urban Meyer from a quarterback standpoint? J.T. Barrett or Tim Tebow? And this is not just who was better, because Tim Tebow won a Heisman, so I know that. But if you're putting together a starting 22 guys who are the essence of a head coach, which one would you choose?
I think if you were to ask a neutral party observer, I think they would still say Tim Tebow.
That's what I was trying to put myself in the mind. Because I was like, I think sometimes you got to be like, all right, what would a fan of Nebraska say about this? What would a neutral college football fan or somebody who's kind of removed from the Florida and Ohio State bubbles? And I think the answer is still Tim Tebow.
I think that is too, but I'm going to make the case for JT. That's part of my hate. Urban Meyer went 83-9 and 54-4 as Ohio State's head coach. That's ridiculous. And he went 7-0 against Michigan. Crazy. Nuts. Then he handed a Ferrari to Ryan Day and said, "Hey, don't crash it." I think the problem with that narrative is it's not 100% true. I think about 2 weeks ago when we did that pod, when I had you guys like pull up the 2018 recruiting class, and we were talking about how, man, on signing day, we were talking about how we would have been talking about how elite this class is going to be, how amazing it's going to be. And then you look at it now that we're at the end of the road and you go, man, this class, how was this class the number 2 class in the country? How are these guys rated as highly as they were? How is a class where the only first round draft pick in a class that had like 3 or 4 5-star recruits is this 3-star guy who was a later on addition? How does this class be the number 2 class in the country? This class kind of didn't meet the bar. And I look at that class and I see a lot of what is missed when you go 83-9 and 54-4 is you were so dominant, but you weren't maximized. And that's how I feel about the JT Barrett era of Ohio State football, especially when you add in the variables that Joe Burrow was his backup for 2 years and what Joe Burrow went on to be. Dwayne Haskins was his backup, and you see what Dwayne Haskins went on to be. And it's like, man, that's what was sitting behind this dude for 3 years here. The fact that he was in a battle with Cardell Jones in 2015, Cardell got drafted and JT Barrett did. You see why I called it hate? Because this is really nitpicky. 61-8 and 39-4 with JT Barrett on the roster. And that does include the 2013 season. Stefan, if you want to take that out, you take away the 12 wins from the regular season, and then obviously the losses in the Big Ten championship game, and also the Clemson and the Orange Bowl as well. But still, that's a dominant the dominant stretch. Orange Bowl loss in 2013. In 2014, even though he's hurt, Ohio State gets to the national championship game and wins that, which includes a Sugar Bowl win over Alabama and a national championship win over Oregon. And it also means a 59-0 thumping of Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. But he's not the guy on the field in those important moments of the year. They won in the Fiesta Bowl the next year in 2015, and the reason they're playing in the Fiesta Bowl is because they lost to Michigan State because the coaching staff completely mishandled that quarterback situation, how they deployed their weapons that year. Ezekiel Elliott just did not get the ball enough against Michigan State. They just mishandled things all year long, and it finally came to bite them in the butt. So they don't win the Big Ten. They don't get to the college football playoff, where I'm pretty sure most people thought they had the best chance of repeating. And so they end up blowing out Michigan and then getting to the Fiesta Bowl and winning that game as well. The very next year, they get back to the Fiesta Bowl. They backdoor their way into the college football playoff because they're not the Big Ten champs. Penn State's the Big Ten champs. Ironically enough, that's the last time James Franklin beat Ohio State as well. They're not the Big Ten champs. They backdoor in, and they get shut out by Clemson, thus opening the door to how Ryan Day came in here, because it was like, hey, your quarterback play is not good enough, and your offense was essentially Curtis Samuel or bust. That can't happen again. They bring in Ryan Day. J.T. Barrett has the best year of his career. They get to the Cotton, but despite that, they still lose to Iowa and Oklahoma that year. That's the year that Baker Mayfield plants the flag at Ohio Stadium, thus beginning a saga that eventually ends with Jack Sawyer ready to fight the entire Michigan team 6 years later. And the government getting involved and putting out, the government's getting involved in Ohio State football way too much right now. Everybody chill out, okay? Everybody chill out. So they go to the Cotton Bowl against USC. They win that game, thus sending off J.T. Barrett as a 3-time Big Ten champ. He is the Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2014, 3-time Big Ten Quarterback of the Year. He's the Big Ten MVP Silver Football Award winner in 2016, which is I thought Curtis Samuel probably should have gotten that in 2016, but that's another example of how things become quarterback awards. As you mentioned, Stefan, he was a third-team All-American in 2014, and he won the Kellen Moore Award in 2017. When you run that down, Andrew, when you just hear 61-8 and 39-4, you think, man, this dude just ran through everybody. But then when you add in the context and break it down season by season, for me, the Urban Meyer era, the further we get away from it was awesome, but it wasn't as good as it probably should have. And I feel like that's what the J.T. Barrett era of Ohio State is.
I think that's fair. And I think the weirder thing is you probably look at the 2015 team as the team where maybe that team had a real big chance to go back to back, just considering how much talent they return from 20. You lose one game and then you smack around Michigan and Notre Dame in the following 2 games right after that. They were one of the best 4 teams in the country, and they just didn't get a chance to do that. So I think there's definitely something there to say, there were teams, and maybe there were teams in specifically that left something on the table. That was also the year that JT didn't really play a lot. That was the year that they had the quarterback situation that things were going back and forth. So it's kind of I know, I believe, Steve, you don't have to help me out here. I believe that game, Zeke, he only got the ball a handful of times, but I think he had the flu or something. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. So yeah, I think when you look at that era, and especially for how talented they were and how long Meyer was around and how good those teams were and what JT had, I don't think it's crazy to suggest that there was something left on the table and there was a little bit more that you could have garnered.
Now, Stefan, you can say the same thing about Chris Spielman in his time. Though the difference is, I don't think at any point from 1984 to 1987, people went, maybe that Chris Spielman's part of the problem. And that was the case with JT. Earl Bruce, 9-3 Earl, he literally went 9-3 the first 3 years that Chris Spielman was here. And then they really fell off a cliff. And that's what got Earl Bruce fired ultimately. But 34-13-1 during Chris Spielman's time here, 23-10 in the Big Ten. 2 Big Ten championships, lost in the Rose Bowl, got a Citrus Bowl win, a Cotton Bowl win as well, and then didn't make a bowl game his last year here. But I do think it's Chris Spielman's more like CJ Stroud in the sense that, guys, this is not the reason why Ohio State's not winning these games. Let's make that abundantly clear. Chris Spielman did his part, and I'm sure when we get to some of these memorable moments and we get into the Michigan stuff, we're going to bring up that. Chris Spielman did all he could do for 4 years. So Ohio State going 9-3, 9-3, 9-3, and then I think 6-4 his last year is not on Chris Spielman at all. And so I think that's the difference here and why I would give the edge to Spielman, because in both situations, both played in eras where there was probably a lot of food still left on the bone. But I don't think Chris Spielman is the reason food was still left on the bone with Ohio State in the 80s. While J.T. Barrett, I think it got to a point that by the end of it, people were thinking, there's got to be more out there from a quarterback play standpoint for us to get to other than just what we're getting.
Just to jump in real quick. So I think this is what you're getting at, but I think what you're saying is it fair to say team success should be weighted more heavily for JT than for Chris just because of the position that he played? And like when you look at how you weight these guys' careers, it's like, hey, Chris Spielman had 29 tackles when we'll get to that, I'm sure, when they lost to Michigan. Like them losing to Michigan that game was not his fault. It was not his problem that they lost to Michigan. I think you could make the argument that, hey, that's more on the quarterback. That's more on, whoever.
But it's not.
Is that kind of the point you're making?
Yes, but I want to tweak it because it's not about the fact that one's a quarterback and one's a linebacker. Because if they were flipped and Chris Spielman was the quarterback and JT Barrett, if Chris Spielman was as good of a quarterback as he is a linebacker and JT Barrett is as good of a linebacker as he is a quarterback, I would still say Chris Spielman is not the reason why Ohio State went 9-3, 9-3, 10-3, 6-4-1. While JT Barrett was part of why those Ohio State football teams, not a lot of losses, by the way, not a lot of losses, but loud losses that ended up being very, very consequential. Like losing to Michigan State in 2015 is possibly the difference between playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, looking on the outside, looking in at the college football playoff, versus Ohio State won the first 2 college football playoff national championships. Losing to Iowa, because I don't think the Oklahoma loss alone would have left them out of the playoff, because they'd still be undefeated in the conference. They just had a non-conference loss. They probably make the playoff in 2017 if they don't have that very, very bad loss to Iowa. They backdoored in 2016, but like he was not the driver of that offense. Curtis Samuel was the driver of that offense. So it's less about their positions and more about the roles they played in winning and losing. It's a little bit more of a conversation with JT Barrett than it is with Chris Spielman.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but the team success stuff still feels like it goes pretty heavily in JT's favor.
Would you say he's the number one reason why?
Probably not. I mean, he's a big reason why. I don't know if I'd say he's number one reason why.
We can give it to JT then. Fine. I mean, again, yeah, 6-1-8. 61-8 is still 61-8, regardless of how you want to spin it.
I'm fine giving individual accolades and success.
Oh, that's not even close. That's Spielman.
Yeah, that's good.
Spielman.
I mean,
arguably the best defensive player in the country for 4.
I was gonna say if you have 205 tackles in a season, why don't we just go ahead and let's just go ahead and do that? Which I think one thing you hit on earlier though, like, or at least you were kind of hinting at, Chris Spielman being the number 4 seed despite pretty consistently going 9-3 is really impressive. It tells you how good of a player he is and how much, when we get into the Buckeye Aura category of this, like how much he means, because I don't like Jack Sawyer's not in this conversation if they go 9-3 every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a lot of guys on this list where if they go 9-3 every year, we're not even considering them. And yet Spielman's the number 4 seed in the bracket.
Spielman is why it wasn't worse than 9. While I feel like with Barrett, I give him more credits for the losses than I do the wins in some of these. And maybe that's not fair. And that's why I called it hate. Okay, let's take a break. 614-350-3315. That's accolades and stats and team success. And now we start to get into the memorable moments. Plus, us continuing to make sure that we give Spielman all the proper praise he deserves. Because even though we are young millennials, we are not going to show our age on this pod ever like that again. And that's not true. We're going to do it again, but not in that way, in a more funny way. We'll get more to that when we come back from the break here on Buckeye Talk.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, hot fudge sundae y en la nueva creamy chili McCrispy Strip dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis as we continue to run through our greatest Buckeye bracket. We're talking Chris Spielman as the 4 seed against J.T. Barrett as the 5 seed. Memorable moments from the 7 to 4. Spielman would be my pick. 29 tackles against the team up north in his final game. That's not actually what they said. That's not the acronym they use, but that's the one we're going to stick with. Now drafts Buckeyes for the Lions behind enemy lines. That's true. He works for the Lions, and they just drafted Tyreek Williams with the first with their first round pick this year. He was also there when they drafted Jeff Okudah with the number 3 pick a couple of years ago. So that's true. He is drafting some, not only Buckeyes, but he does draft Buckeyes. I forgot to intrude the number on this one. I apologize for this one. But Chris Spielman arrived at Ohio State with some aura thanks to appearing. Actually, no, I'm going to save that one. I'm going to save that one because it helps make a point. From the 205, it's got to be J.T. Barrett, 4-time Big Ten champ, national champ, 4-0 against the team up north. Only WTF loss in 4 years. Only one WTF loss in 4 years. Finally learning how to throw in 2017 under Ryan Day. Shows some toughness, leadership, work ethic, and personal standards of excellence of being the Buckeye. Only embarrassing thing he did was block T&D. I don't know, but JT Barrett is the forever block. We have not seen an Ohio State quarterback get the block O yet, but if that award existed, I think JT Barrett would have gotten it in 2017. And the number one reason why is he is the first player in Ohio State history to ever be a 3-time captain. Tuff Borland would eventually do that as well, but 3-time captain, I think it starts there because that's about more than just being a good football player. That is for 3 straight years. Everybody in that locker room looked at you and said, you're early.
And at a place like Ohio State, that matters more than a lot of other places. I think you're 100% right. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind he would have been a block O.
100 years from now, when the NCAA allows players to wear 00, the block O award is for Bill Willis. The double O, the double block is going to be the block O is going to be for JT Barrett, and it's going to
We can award an honorary block O.
Yeah. What if they start doing that for both sides of the ball? Well, no, it's going to be a double butt for his butt, and every year the award is going to have Jim Harbaugh doing the JT was short meme. Richard. I think that's a memorable moment for JT Barrett.
100%. I actually, I don't think we've brought it up in talking about JT yet. That might be, for better or for worse, his most memorable moment.
Yes, having a big butt, so he wasn't short. That's a weird thing to say, but it's true.
True. Yeah, when I was going through kind of best moments and doing some research and trying to figure out, which ones deserve to be in this conversation, I got to a point where I was just like, this has to be part of the conversation.
Started the cover. After you say, hey, he's the first ever 3-time captain, you go, Jim Harbaugh would have had a win over Ohio State 5 years earlier if it weren't for JT.
And what's funny, too, is when you hear the name, everyone calls it JT was short, or at least online, that's what everyone calls it. You would think automatically, that's a bad moment in Ohio State history. It's no. JT wasn't short, but they thought he was short. So now it's called JT was short.
Is JT's butt the number one thing on your list, Andrew? And I know I asked it like that. I know what I did.
Oh, man. No, it wasn't.
It's not number one in your heart?
Yeah, JT's butt was not number one on my list, believe it or not.
Number one on your list then, man, if it's not the butt.
Well, in terms of moments for JT, the one that I first thought of was 39-38 versus Penn State. And I get it wasn't against Michigan, but go back and look at the highlights of that game. That team does not win that game without JT Barrett. And that was one of the better football games that I can remember watching. And it was for a lot of these guys, you have to look up. It's like spoiler alert for Chris Spielman. I'm let me look up the 29 tackles game. And you're kind of going through all the archives. You're doing all this stuff. With JT Barrett, I was memorable moments. Oh yeah, I remember that game. I remember watching that game with a bunch of Ohio State fans and one Penn State fan who had a great first half and was not well by the end of the game. And I there were moments of that game where Gus Johnson was doing, and whether you like him or not, he was right to freak out because he was oh, what a throw!
That was peak Gus Johnson.
There were throws that JT made where he was getting drilled and he would just find somebody open. And it's important to remember, this was 2017. This was not F it, Jeremiah down there somewhere. This was not, hey, we have 17 first-round picks on this roster. They had really great receivers on that team. Terry McLaurin was on that team. Yeah. They had great receivers, but it was not at the level that it is today. I think that is important to give him kind of props for. So that was the moment that I thought of because I thought about that team and that game and I just went, man, there were a lot of Ohio State moments over his career that that were great. But that to me was the game that just was like, he is making plays that it's the laziest narrative we have in sports media and in sports fandom. But he was just a gamer, and he was just a gamer when it came time to it, man. He was just a winner. And like, Ohio State was losing that entire game from literally the first play. Not the first play from scrimmage, the first play when Saquon ran the kickback, and somehow they were down by 15 points with like 6 minutes left, and JT found a way to win that game. That to me is the game that I think maybe epitomizes what JT Barrett was and who JT Barrett was as Ohio State's starting quarterback.
Joe Thomas Barrett the fourth.
Oh my God.
Who says I can't win the big game? That was Pete Gus Johnson. That, I think, the best 2 games of Ohio State that Gus Johnson has ever called is 39-38 over Penn State in 2017 and 59-0 over Wisconsin in 2014. When every time Cardale Jones threw a deep shot, wow! Cardale Jones. The whole world's looking at it. Cardale Jones. That's peak. That's LeBron against Boston in 2012, man. It's chef kiss. The thing about that Penn State game, for one, 17 straight completions to close out the game. That was an Ohio State record that Kyle McCord later broke, but it took him 2 games. That was over 2 games that Kyle McCord broke that record in 2023. CJ Stroud tied it in the Michigan State game. I think he either tied it or came 1 short of it in the Michigan State game in 2021. But 17 straight completions to close out that game. The interesting thing is, I think this is the most efficient stretch of JT Barrett's career, these 2 games against Nebraska and against Penn State. They beat Nebraska 56-14 the week before that, where he was 27 of 33 for 325 yards and 5 touchdowns. So across 2 games, 60 of 72, that's an 83.3 completion percentage for 653 yards and 9 touchdowns. He also added 27 carries for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns in those 2 games. No sacks. Well, no, he was sacked. He didn't actually sack anybody, but he did have a tackle in the Penn State game. That's an interesting fact, too. Yeah, I think that's it, because you got to remember, earlier that year, Oklahoma had come to town. They lose that game 31-16, and he's only 19 of 35 for 183 yards, and he throws in an interception. So that was kind of a thing with JT Barrett, is that, like, he doesn't show up when you need him to show up. He shows up when there's a clear talent gap, and he hadn't had that moment because, again, in 2014, he didn't do it against Virginia Tech. He did do it against Penn State. He got a moment in that game, too, where he led a double overtime win over Penn State. But I hadn't had a lot of those moments because he was not the quarterback for the college football playoff run in 2014. And then in 2016, they just weren't really all that great offensively. They kind of backdoored the way in. In 15, things were so weird. So this was kind of JT Barrett's staple moment, Stefan. Here comes some more hate, though. Here's the problem. He had the best 2-game stretch, I think, of his career from an efficiency standpoint against Nebraska and Penn State. But if somebody were to come down from space and ask me to describe what 2 games I should watch that best describes the JT Barrett Ohio State fan experience, it's Penn State and Iowa. Because he did that, and then 7 days later, he throws a pick 6 on his first play against Iowa, and he finishes the day 18 of 34 with 3 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions. Like, that paired together is JT Barrett at his ultimate high and his ultimate low.
The joke I was going to make was JT Barrett was part of the only time, right, or James Franklin has beaten Ohio State. He's also the reason James Franklin has never won 2 straight games against Ohio State.
What's funny is every Ohio State-Penn State game since 2017 has played out just like that. You get to the end of the first half, you're like, oh, okay, Penn State might win this game. And you get to the end, and you're like, oh, no, never mind. And over time, you just see it enough that you stop believing in it. You get Dwayne Haskins doing it the very next year at Penn State. You get Justin Fields doing it for 2 years. CJ Stroud doing it. You get what JT did in 2022. Even this year, Will Howard just threw a pick 6 on his first throw. Will Howard fumbled out the back of the end zone. Penn State's at the goal line.
And that was, the 2017 game was like the one where it was just like, that was like kind of the start of it, because
It was
like
the
you
start
mentioned
of Penn State teasing its fan base that it actually could be.
That one was the meanest one for Penn State's fans, because like, hey, holy snot, we just got a pick 6 and it was 10-0 and Ohio State's had 3 plays and oh my God, we're at home and oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And it's like every kind of game was like, you play that, and then like the first kind of couple of drives go by, and then you get into the second half, and it's like Penn State was winning that game by 15 points with 5 minutes. Like they were winning that game by a lot or whatever it was. Like they were winning that game by multiple scores in the fourth quarter, and they found a way to lose. And then every time since, so it's like that was like that was the start of it. That was like frankly, like if that happened in 2024, like if you flip the 2024 game and the 2017 game where it's like, man, like, Penn State came into Ohio Stadium and they got a pick six early, and then, Ohio State's front seven just stopped Saquon Barkley, which they did that day. But like, they didn't do anything. Saquon didn't do anything. If that happened in 2024, we'd be like, they're never going to beat him again. This is impossible. They were doing this, and it's never going to happen.
I feel that way now. I mean, they're not. I might rank Penn State number 1 in the AP poll. I mean, I think they're going to beat Ohio State when they
breaking news on Buckeye Talk.
I might. It's early. The AP poll doesn't come out until August. That's not something it's in the back of my mind right now. But I just think this Penn State and at Iowa for me, Stefan, that is JT Barrett in a nutshell. When it's good, it creates these moments. When it's bad, it creates these moments. And it's why I feel like he left here with a love-hate relationship with the fan base.
Yep. Not every memorable moment has to be a good one. It just has to be memorable.
Has to be memorable. That's it.
Well, and the other part of this
sliding against Oregon is technically memorable.
Yeah.
And like the thing that I was going to say was like, hey, look, JT Barrett was the reason that Ohio State beat Penn State.
He's also the reason they lost Iowa.
They also got thumped by Iowa the next week. And like, it was one of those things where it was like that. I remember there was like a brief conversation that year of like, man, Ohio State should, and the Big Ten should look out for their teams better, because it was like both Ohio State and Penn State lost the following week after just that war. And Ohio State went to Iowa and got destroyed. And I remember that like JT was not good at all in that game. And, that was one, like, I think there was a lot more give and take. And I think that especially, I think time might be good to JT Barrett. Like, I think if we did this poll in 2019, I don't know if he's as high, because I think people, like you said, Stephen, were just kind of ready for a change and ready for a higher ceiling player. But there were good and bad moments. And I think that was kind of a good encapsulation of it. Was they had a great moment against Penn State, and then the following week they lose by 31 points to Iowa.
Hold on to that thought, because I don't think I don't agree, but I don't think I agree either. And I'm going to make a point about
what?
I'll explain later.
Okay.
Meanwhile, on the other side of things, 29 times. What do you want to do with it, Stefan? He tied Tom Cousineau for the most tackles in a single game by an Ohio State football player against Michigan in 1986. They also lost to Michigan in 1986, 26-24. And we have spent time talking about the fact that Jack Sawyer had an immaculate interception in his final Michigan loss, but they lost the game, so who cares? Do we have to apply the same logic to Chris Spielman?
I think so. That's what I struggle with. The Jack Sawyer thing, maybe it's a little bit different because he also never beat Michigan, so he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt of, you played well, but it was in a loss, like it's okay. Because he doesn't have the wins to make it okay. He doesn't have the wins to make a loss in which he played well okay. So maybe Spielman gets a little bit more benefit of the doubt than Jack did, but I struggle with it. I struggle with it because I'm not sure how much that's, I guess, celebrated when it came in a loss. It's sure we can say it's memorable. We just did it with the JT Iowa game. Like, it's memorable. If you were there or if you were listening on the radio, whatever it may have been, like, you remembered 29 tackles against Michigan, but that might be all you try to remember from that game, if any.
The other one that pointed out to me, I'm saving Wheaties box stuff right now. The other one that stands out to me is before the Cotton Bowl, in his final bowl game, he goes and he visits a hospital. He goes and visits an injured high school player at a hospital, and he promised him he'd have an interception in the game. And then he went and had an interception in the game. Those are, whenever you say you're going to go do something, and then you go do it, especially something interceptions don't always just kind of happen. There's not a lot of
There's a pick six too, right?
Yes. Interceptions are like 50%, well, more like 40% skill, 60% just being in the right place at the right time. And so for those two things to come together, and you paired with the day before, he said, yeah, I'm going to go do this thing, and he went and did it, that's memorable for me, but you called your shot. Calling your shot is always okay with me. No problem calling your shot. Any other moments for Chris Spielman?
I came with the 29 tackles one.
I was going to say, he kind of does fall into this category, too, of like, he was just so consistent over his career.
Average like 15 tackles a
right.
game.
Like Archie Griffin's the one seed. I don't know if he has a memorable moment per se, because he was just so consistent. I think Spielman kind of falls into that conversation. That's how you kind of become an all-time great, is you don't have, if you're consistent, is how you become one of the best linebackers in college football history, right? It's not having a 29 tackle game and then not showing up the rest of the season. So like, it's also like for linebackers, I think hard. Like we even struggled with AJ Hawk to come up with like a memorable moment per se, just because of the position itself. So I think what he maybe lacks in memorable moments is why he maybe makes it up in accolades and stats, because he did it every week. It's same logic applies that I mentioned on the last podcast. If you're someone who goes to a game once a year, you probably saw a good Chris Spielman game and you remember it.
So here's Michigan success. Chris Spielman goes 2-2. They win in 1984, 21-6 against a Michigan team that went 6-6. They lose 27-17 in 1985 against a Michigan team that's 10-1-1. They lose to a Michigan team that was 11-2, 26-24 in 1986. And then they beat a Michigan team that finished 8-4, 23-20 in 1987. Here's J.T. Barrett. They win 42-41 against a Michigan team that's 7-6. In 2014, they win 42-28 against a Michigan team that's 5-7. And then this is where it gets fun, because now they start playing some decent Michigan teams. Urban Meyer played a lot of bad Michigan teams during his time here, but he also played a couple of good ones. In 2015, they won 42-13 against a Michigan team that was 10-3. And again, Ohio State's ticked off because they had just lost to Michigan State and ruined their chances of getting back into the college football playoff race. So that does matter there. In 2016, memorable game, 30-27 in double overtime against a 10-3 Michigan team. I think that was a 2-3 matchup, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a big deal. And then in 2017 in Ann Arbor, they win 31-20 against a Michigan team that is 8-5. But I didn't include that one fully. I gave him a half point for that one because he didn't finish that game. Because, again, another memorable moment that's as much about a guy who didn't make the bracket as it is about J.T. Barrett. J.T. got hurt in warm-ups because of a cameraman. And so Dwayne Haskins had to come into the game, thus beginning the Dwayne Haskins on-field story. Dwayne finishes that game, has a really good game. And then there's like conversations about, is J.T. Barrett going to be healthy enough to play in the Big Ten championship game the following week? Dwayne Haskins was taking all the reps with the ones during the week. Then they come to find out JT can play, and they go on to win the Big Ten championship. So I gave JT a half a point for the final Michigan game. So I made him 4.5 and against Michigan, while Chris Spielman is 2-2. How much Michigan credit can we give either one of them, though? And the reason why I'm asking it with these two specifically is I brought the records in, as you noticed, with what they did against Michigan. And this is not blaming Chris Spielman. This is just the team he's played on. They beat Michigan when Michigan was bad, and they lost to Michigan when Michigan was good. While at least with J.T. Barrett, good, bad, and different, they beat Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, JT was part of one of the most dominant stretches, if not the most dominant stretch in this rivalry's history. And I think that matters.
Yeah, I'm with Stefan. Like being like we talk about it, it's like the moments that it happens in, right? Like it's not just like, XY, did you win binary 1 or 0, yes or no? It's like, well, there's also some context here, and like being part of that stretch, especially that game in 16, like that has to matter, I think, just for the way that some of those games happen and the teams that Michigan had.
Point JT.
Yeah, I think so.
From Tyler in Toronto, 4-year starter at quarterback, 3-time Big Ten quarterback of the year, Big Ten player of the year, never lost to the team up north, holds 25 plus Ohio State records, countless Big Ten records, including most touchdowns, most touchdown passes, most career yards, and led a team through 11.5 games of a national championship season. That's a good way to put that. Heart, grit, toughness, and leadership. He embodies everything that it means to be a Buckeye. The Penn State comeback in the shoe, and the Wolf Grays will live on forever. That's true. They were wearing some alternate jerseys. Joe Thomas Barrett IV. He's not on a position Mount Rushmore. He's not the best athlete. He's not the most talented. He's not even an NFL prospect from a school that all they do is produce NFL talent. But he has an argument for the greatest Buckeye. Let's take a break, and then I want to elaborate more on that when we come back from the break here on Buckeye Talk.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. And Tyler Toronto, I think, hit J.T. Barrett on a nail for what his aura is. Like, Ohio State they spit out NFL talent every year. It's just kind of what they do. Andrew, you made a point earlier about the idea that maybe time goes by, J.T. gets higher on this list. Well, he's fifth right now. I don't think I agree. And it's because of what Tyler Toronto said here at the end here. He's not going to be on a position Mount Rushmore. He's not the best athlete. Not the most talented, not even an NFL prospect from a school where all they do is produce NFL talent, but he has the argument for the greatest Buckeye. I don't think he can get any higher than 5, given the 4 people who are ahead of him.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think he's going to drop any lower than 5, even though he is not going. The further and further we get from J.T. Barrett, given the way Ryan Day's producing these quarterbacks right now, he is going to be arguably the worst quarterback Ryan Day's had during his time here. Right, it's from a sheer talent standpoint, it's either him or Will Howard. If we're just talking sheer NFL arm talent, because I mean, Dwayne's a first-round draft pick, Justin and CJ were first-round draft picks. Julian Sands, a 5-star recruit who might be in that lineage of first-round draft picks when we get to the end of the coffin here. Tavian St. Clair looks the part of a dude who might be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft one day. Brady Edmonds looks the part for a guy who's still 16 years old, so we don't know what's going to happen here. And there's no reason to believe Ryan Day's not going to keep recruiting quarterbacks at a high level. So there's going to be plenty of more shots. I would over the next 10 years, Ohio State has 2.5 more first-round picks at quarterback. I think given what's happening right now, I might take the over.
What's the time frame?
10 years.
10 years.
I'd probably take the over. I think you left off one name that I think some people would say he was worse than JT, which is Kyle McCord. But in terms of recruiting and talent, like if we're talking sheer talent,
like arm talent, Kyle McCord was better.
McCord got drafted,
yeah, and McCord got drafted.
There was, I think, and that's
sure. There's a talent debate. There's also just like the how good were you? Like I don't care about your ratings. I think a lot of people would probably say JT over Kyle McCord.
I think JT has all the other components that are necessary, which is why I don't think he is a better just sheer quarterback arm talent guy than Kyle McCord was. But there's more to it than that. And that's why we're having conversations right now about, hey, is Julian, built like that? No one's worried about him being able to throw the ball. But you got dog in you, man? Can you be a leader? Can you command a locker room? And you'd rather, in college especially, you'd probably rather have that than the other thing.
JT had a lot of that.
And JT, a 3-time captain, man. Regardless of how you feel about his arm talent and his overall just natural ability, but nobody questioning who was running things in that locker room. They were
aura.
Yeah, he was in a quarterback battle for 7 weeks into the season, and not once in that fall camp that people go, I don't know if JT's our leader. No, this is JT's team, regardless of who's taking snaps right now.
It's a little bit like if you guys have ever seen Rudy, where the coach looks at him and goes, I wish I could put your
guys have ever seen Rudy.
Body. No, I've never heard of this movie before.
But it's like he looks at Rudy, he's like, I wish I could put your heart in some of my players' bodies. And like it's obviously disrespectful in some ways to JT because JT was not like some scrawny little walk-on who was like kind of whiny.
Like a top 150 recruit came out of high school.
Yeah, he was like JT was like a great player, but it's like it's like you look at some of the talented players and it's like, man, what made them great was not what made JT great. And what made JT great was just something, frankly, I mean, Steven, you covered Fields and Haskins and Stroud and McCord and Howard. And I think it's fair to say that none of those guys, I think you could say, oh, well, CJ had the best blah, 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 but Justin had the best blah, blah, blah. And you could kind of go through like with physical talents. But I don't know how many people you're saying they were better as a leader and they were better as a captain and they were more impactful in the locker room than JT. Like JT had something that none of those guys, some of whom are like on NFL All-Pro trajectories, they didn't have what JT had.
No, the only one who was even close to that was Will Howard. I'll say this though, but they had it. Even if it wasn't at the level of JT, they had, that's the thing. And especially here where you're better than everybody every week for the most part. You're literally just going to be better than everybody else, which is why Ryan Day, when it comes to the quarterback play, how often have you heard him go, oh, you got to be able to make the throw when it's time to make the throw? It's make the routine plays routinely, footwork. It's like basic fundamental stuff, the way he talks about quarterback play. You want to know why? Because can't nobody cover Can't nobody cover Marvin. Can't nobody cover Emeka. Can't nobody cover Jackson and Garrett and Chris and Carnell and Brandon Ennis. And now you got Max Clare. Can't nobody cover these dudes, man. Are you serious? Somebody catching Trey on a breakaway run? Oh, we watched Quinshawn dribble a man's head on the ground and then walk into the end zone. You're better than everybody else. That's kind of the point here. It's one of those schools where you're literally just better than everybody else. So you don't have to always. No, when it's time to be special, when it's time to do what CJ did against Georgia, what Justin did against Clemson, what Dwayne did against Penn State, what JT Barrett did against Penn State, what Will Howard did on his playoff front. Now, yes, sometimes when you get in matchup games, you got to be able to, do what it do. But 85% of your schedule, you're just better than everybody else. So I don't need you to be special. I don't need you to be Superman this week, dude. I need you to get Superman the ball. You're Alfred. Tell Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Flash and all, just tell them where to go. That's your job, essentially, as Ohio State's quarterback. You are Alfred. So when that's true, then and we know what I'm saying when I say it, that has to be special. That has to be top notch. You can't not, like, when you lose to Michigan 13-10, you got to have it, because you're going to have to pull this team out of the darkest place it's been in some time. And do you think, let's run down the list of Ryan Day quarterbacks. Do you think, we know Will Howard could do it because he just did it. Do you think Kyle McCord would have been able to do that?
No.
Do you think CJ Stroud would have been able to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you would know better, but
I mean, he did it.
Yeah, probably.
He did it.
Yeah.
He literally did it. They lost the Georgia game because all their weapons were on the sideline or out of
that was not on him.
Yeah. Like they were going to win the national championship that game. So he did it. Justin's a harder one because I think COVID, we didn't really get a chance to be around Justin the same way we gotten a chance to be around the other quarterbacks and get to know him, because, I mean, entire second year with him was through a computer screen, but he got knocked out of the Michigan game, came back in and threw a touchdown pass. He broke his ribs in the Clemson game, missed one play and came back and threw a touchdown pass. So I think he would have done it just based off what we've seen. His proof's in the pudding. And then JT knows, zero doubt in my mind, JT Barrett could have pulled him out of that hole. Now, does it mean he would have been able to go execute football-wise? That's a different conversation, right? That's football. But having this team ready to play and moving on from that moment, there is only one quarterback, we say right now, from the Ryan Day time being here, whether as an assistant coach or as a head coach, that we don't think would have been able to do that. That is important. And it's why he can't, that's aura. That's not about being a good football player. He can't go any higher because I think the four people above him also have that type of aura. So you got to start looking at other things. But I do not think there is a quarterback that Ryan Day can have who is going to have more aura than what JT Barrett has, while also saying that he is going to have 3 more first-round draft picks at quarterback. I think both of those things can be true.
The other guy was on a Wheaties box.
And the other guy was on a freaking Wheaties box, man.
As a high schooler.
Yeah, back when that was, like, cool. With all due respect,
I still think it's pretty cool.
It is cool, but, like, if Jeremiah Smith was on a Wheaties box today,
I think it'd be pretty cool.
Is it as cool as it was in 1980?
Yes.
Probably not.
Have you guys seen the Thunderbolts yet? Oh, no, only Marvel. There's like a post-credit scene where one of the superheroes is the Red Guardian is hype about the fact that he's on the Wheaties box, and he's like, the entire. And this is not spoiler. The movie's been out for a month. The entire.
I am a Marvel guy that wants to watch the movie, so let's be careful with any spoilers.
Oh no!
I haven't seen it yet.
It's one of the. It's not a. There's 2 post-credit scenes. One of them is actually important, and I won't spoil it for you. The other one's just more of a fun. Thanks for sticking around. He's in the grocery store, standing next to his Wheaties box, and a woman who's grocery shopping walks by and he's like looking at her, look at the Wheaties box, trying to get her to put 2 and 2 together that I'm the guy on the Wheaties box. And it's so funny because she puts the Wheaties box down when she goes around the corner because the weird guy just handed you a cereal box. I'm not holding on to this. But it's still cool, Andrew. Being on the Wheaties box is never not going to be cool. People still eat cereal.
This is true.
It's still cool. It's just being on a Sports Illustrated cover isn't as cool because Sports Illustrated is kind of not what it used to be. But the Wheaties
They have
box,
like a digital like daily cover now. And
it's
like
not.
you'll see it come out. It's like, oh, you're on the cover. And it's like, well, kind of.
Yeah, it doesn't hit the same way as like when LeBron was on there as a junior in
Right.
high school. Chris Spielman, he was the first one. Here's the text. I apologize. I left the number off of it. I apologize for doing that. Chris Spielman arrived at Ohio State with some aura thanks to appearing on a box of Wheaties featuring his Massillon Tiger football uniform. He was the first high school athlete to appear on the Wheaties box. Believe it or not, that was kind of a thing back in the day, to Andrew's point. Add to that Spielman's aura, gung-ho, never say die attitude, which is, he's a linebacker. Linebackers are like that. They have reckless abandonment, just like cornerbacks are just unnecessarily cocky all the time. But he was on the freaking Wheaties box, Stefan.
Well, also like in the high school uniform on a Wheaties box, rocking an absolute killer mustache.
Dog.
Like that's aura. And also just like those massive shoulder pads. And when the jerseys were still kind of like the what do we call it? But like you could see through the shirt. Like they're like pennies. Is that what they call them? Like if you get them in like gym class or something. Like that's just like the whole look is just awesome.
It's the mustache, it's the mullet hair, it's the buck teeth. This is Peyton Pierce. This man looks like Peyton Pierce looks today. Can we ask Peyton Pierce at fall camp about Chris Spielman and if he's ever reached out to him? Because I feel like he's trying to look. I don't think he's trying. I think he is doing a very good job of looking like Chris Spielman. Now, will he play like Chris Spielman? I don't know. That's a different conversation. But physically looking like Chris Spielman, I think is what Peyton Pierce looks like. This is immaculate. He also looks like he's 35 years old and he's 17.
And the photos of him playing for Ohio State, like I think we mentioned this already on another pod, but like the neck guard, the shoulder pads, it's just the visor. This is literally like what you want your linebacker to look.
He looks like he plays. He looks like a guy who's going to go get 30 tackles today.
The thing that I loved about the people from that era is like, this is a very, very niche football thing, but like, I think Bosworth did it or whatever, but like sometimes the jerseys would almost look like V-necks where it was like it looked like the jersey was like ripped right at your neck. And I don't know, that type of look was just really great to me. Because like, obviously, I mean, and like the jerseys, like they were like see-through. You could see the pads that he had on underneath. But just like that like look of like the slightly like ripped V-neck looking jersey, just, I think you just walk out onto the field and you look at that guy and you're like, well, now the coach. It's like, how many speeches did opposing coaches give about Chris Spielman that began with, he puts his pants on just one leg at a time like you do? And you hear that and you're like, oh, we're screwed. We lost. It's over. And that's just all this look.
I think his family still lives in Columbus too. You know, he's working for the Lions. So he's still around. It's not in the same capacity that Archie Griffin is around because, again, president of the Alumni Association. But
no, he's
program.
And he worked a bit like in media. He worked 90s fan.
Yep.
So he is very much still around the Ohio State circles, which, I mean, that matters.
Yeah, because the executive career is recent. I think it started in 2020 when he became the special assistant to the owner and the CEO of the Lions. He was also the head coach of the Columbus Destroyers, former Arena Football League team. So it's even more of it. But it's again, he was on the cover of it's Archie's the bar for a former football player who's around the program. I think Chris Spielman is like that next level of being around the program while also kind of living your life. You still kind of live around here. As you mentioned, Stefan, he's done media and he's James Laurinaitis before James Laurinaitis. If James Laurinaitis had a mullet, a mustache, was on the cover of a Wheaties box, and had almost 30 tackles in a football game and looks like a created linebacker on a Madden game. I don't know who should win this one. I think you can make a case for either one of them. I think Chris Spielman was awesome, even if his teams weren't always great. I think J.T. Barrett played for great football teams, even if he was not always great. And I think in both eras, for different reasons, there's a love-hate relationship with that era of Ohio State. You loved everything that was great about it, but there's also a feeling of things were left on the table with both eras. And they're not the number one reasons why but they're also not the number one reasons why that was prevented, if that makes any sense here. But I do think this is going to be an interesting 4-5 game where I hope we did a better job of honoring Chris Spielman on this pod than we did in former pods. But I do wonder if this is where age comes into play, where maybe some of our older texters, 614-350-3315, go Chris Spielman, maybe some of our younger texters go JT Barrett, or maybe some older people who saw both and go, you know what, JT's a little bit more. While there's some younger guys who are hearing us go, Chris Spielman was on a Wheaties box, they look up the Wheaties box and go, that's a dude who looks like he's an Ohio State football player. I would recruit that guy right now. I want that look on my team right now. And I'm here to tell you, James Laurinaitis found him down there in Texas, and his name is Peyton Pierce. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. I will wrap up our Elite Eight conversations. We talked Troy Smith versus James Laurinaitis. That's our 210 game, and our Ryan Day Regional Championship. Talked Archie Griffin versus AJ Hawk as the number 1 seed versus the number 9 seed. That's the Jen Tressel Regional Championship. And then Eddie George versus Orlando Pace. That's the number 3 versus 6 seed for the Paul Brown Regional Championship. And now today we wrap things up with Chris Spielman versus JT Barrett, 4-5 as the Urban Meyer Regional Championship. Voting is going on right now and continue through the weekend and through Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day. There will be no pod on Monday because we're all taking a second to get our voices back a little bit. We've been doing a lot of talking lately, so we're no pod on Monday. And we'll be back on Tuesday to reveal the Final Four as we come to the end of our Woody Hayes Greatest Buckeye bracket for Andrew Gillis and Stefan Krajisnik. Continue to text, continue to sign up for the survey, 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.